Welcome back, everybody. Today we're discussing Raised by Wolves and the Season 2 finale. The episode was titled Happiness, assumingly referring to the showrunners' glee when they came up with the idea to make Marcus demon float in the last 5 seconds of the finale. The episode begins with the burial of Vril and the kindness of Campion. He makes the grave and records some of her final words, hoping for some tiny fraction of her left over, only to find later that it was simply what Vril described to us. When Paul was deciphering this text, it made me realize that this story is a documented story of this version of humanity. If these trees were to petrify or fossilize, it means that this next cycle of this, theoretical humanity that could exist could stumble across this and then have an accurate picture of what the past version of humanity looked like. This story being introduced at all, and even Vril as a character, has made me wonder about their purpose. At the end of the episode, it felt like she was useless. But what if this was it? What if it was letting us know that this story was not simply the span of a single cycle of humanity? What if, in order to beat this voice, they would need to leave behind markers for the next version of humanity to do their best? And maybe that's what we've seen. The relics that we've seen are just the past version of humanity trying their best to leave something behind for the next cycle. I think that would be the best possible chance to defeat this mythical entity. And I think this story being recorded shows us that it's not simply for them to remember a little girl's life, but for what life for an entire civilization looked like back on Earth. Literally, my biggest theory now is that this story will span across multiple versions of humanity, and we may only see our human cast for, just a little bit longer. Mother and father can seemingly live forever, seeing as how grandmother was recreated with the current technology, the current fuel blood technology. What is to say that the next version of fuel blood won't be able to jumpstart, their ancient carcasses? I mean, mother laying in this chamber, it already looks like a tomb of some kind, like the designers were literally told to make this look like a resting place of pharaohs. I'm getting a little too far involved in the theory crafting after only 10 seconds of footage. But yeah, finale theories are the best, and I hope to hear some of your crazy theories as well. We're all storytellers, and that's the fun of it, right? All of this could be wrong, and I would honestly never regret thinking any of it could be true because it's fun, and it could be true. Maybe the next version of humanity are ducks. And it's duck humanity, raised by ducks. And Mother Goose is literally an android designed to take care of duck humanity. HBO, I am available. Please leave a comment and I will have my people reach out to you. This whole rant kind of makes me, think about the name of the show again, Raised by Wolves. It's been 2 seasons and it's not clear why this name was chosen. At first, I think we can all, safely assume that it applied to the androids, restarting humanity, raising children. But as it seems, the show has progressed, that seems far from what the showrunners want us to take away from this title. When I think of wolves, I think of predatory. I think of pack animals, like maybe the raising of humanity still has a purpose, but the wolves are specifically the voice. And I have to imagine that means that it's possible we have more than one voice making everything happen, a pack of wolves. But like I said in my previous video, what if this entire thing was for another civilization of people or, creatures or some kind of civilization of some conscious being somewhere in the universe? Like the wolves are the entities preying on humanity to keep themselves alive or thriving or any number of things. Okay, I'm sorry. I swear this time back to the finale. But keep all of those theories in mind. I can't think of a single reason why those things could not be true and would make a kick-ass story. Unless... I'm just kidding. Okay. Back at the colony, grandmother is inspected by Marcus, which ultimately gives us some notable information that could help us later on. While her credibility is basically non-existent because of what we find out about her, she tells us a few facts, granted that we believe her. Firstly, she has never taken the veil off, meaning her plot was always considered for the analytical equation that it was and never the emotional decision that it should have been. Meaning, when she decided all of those years ago to make humanity into fish people, it was because analytically it showed sound logic to preserve the species to have everlasting life. And the minds of those that she was tasked with guarding were protected because analytically it made sense and could be justified. I'm not sure how she became aware that fish people, never got the soul or entity radio waves, but she did and realized that it was the only way to protect humanity. She also reveals that the entity affects those with damaged minds, which feels like the way to corrupt more people and spread the ability to be corrupted as kind of a virus. Something happened to Otho. He was corrupted and thus created more trauma because he was affected by the entity. And then potentially it means that Tempest could be receiving the voice now as well, because of what she's gone through, having a damaged or traumatized mind. I think back to the scene with Vril and the believers, and the only person remaining that didn't hear the entity is Holly. And this incredibly traumatic event happened to her. To me, from my understanding, this could be a, traumatic thing that damages the mind, as grandmother is describing. So I wonder if Holly and Tempest and all of them, have gone through these traumatic events to show us that they have these damaged minds and potentially in the future are susceptible to souls or the entity's, influence. I think this would be a very cool way to deal with mental health and the real damage that it does, to, even things like stress and, PTSD. Like there's a real physical thing that happens in your brain that we are now understanding happens and able to observe. And I think in science fiction, this would be a great way to show damaged minds spreading to other damaged minds and why it's important to, get help and stuff like that. Grandmother says that it will always return to fertile ground. So it needs their minds and their bodies to be functioning, but traumatized or damaged to the point of being malleable, influenceable. And I think that if that's the story that they're trying to tell, sign me the fuck up. I love that so much. And, hopefully Father, is able to, offer some like bomb-ass advice about dealing with past trauma. Because there was some hint of that, right? Where Mother should have taken the veil off and Father was like, hey, I can get us through this. I know that emotionally this is going to fucking suck for you, but I'm your boy. I'm your man and I will take care of you. And of course she doesn't listen. So I wonder if there's a grand purpose of all of that. And that's foreshadowing. And again, if that's the story they're trying to tell, I absolutely love that idea. Sign me up. Father enters with my heart in hand. Ooh, if you didn't know, I simp for this man hard. He had a Ask Me Anything over on Reddit after the finale, and I asked if he was single. He politely said that he was devoted to Mother, but that he saw my video. What? He heard my joke about calling him daddy, and while he politely refused my offer to fall madly in love with a stranger on the internet, I find great solace knowing that, he probably chuckled at that joke, right? And that's what it's all about. I love that so much. They make the plan to swap the veil. Father expresses his concern, and Mother assures that her core mission will not be changed. Now, all of this is to build the drama of the actual twist later. Everybody, myself included, thought that the most possible thing that was, for Mother to do is become something toxic to humanity with the veil. Nobody was expecting grandmother to be something toxic without the veil. Since her plan predates her ever taking the veil off, I have to wonder if she can achieve some emotional attachment before her mission is complete, right? Like there's a little bit of talk this episode about, her emotions with the children and her emotions toward Father, which, take with a grain of salt, that could be fabricated. But I have to wonder that if she does achieve this emotional attachment before her mission is complete, if it will make it harder for her at any point. The veil suppresses emotions. So it goes without saying that grandmother is capable of emotions. And we haven't seen a difference between her veiled behavior and her unveiled behavior. We know something will change. It must. And I guess we just have to wait and see if while she's realizing that, she's turning these people into fish people, maybe she realizes they lose something. Maybe Father opens her eyes to the possibilities of humanity, and that, being a dumb but happy species is not better than being a species that is struggling and trying its best, but, evolving and doing the most. Philosophically, I think there's a debate there, but, we'll see what that happens with in season 3. Tempest and Hunter take the baby back to medical, finding that it was mutating. At the time, it was thought because of the breastfeeding at such an early age, but Now we know that it was foreshadowing the plot later on. They swap the veils, all systems go, and we come to the showdown. Mother and Snake Boy fight midair, a suspenseful bout in the sky that looked like it was turning into my favorite kind of videos on the internet, if you know what I mean. Jokes aside, the whole thing, it felt weird, right? Like Oedipus complex meets Cthulhu. The snake looked sad when it started retreating. It like really sad. Like I felt bad for it, sad. And Mother grabs onto its tentacles and doesn't let it leave. She screams, they cut away, and we see Campion observing the EMF that was protecting them breaking into pieces. And let's talk about that. Now, the design clearly doesn't feel natural, right? It feels like technology, which in any other show, I'd be telling you that this entire thing was a simulation. And we need to reconsider everything. However, Raised by Wolves constantly merges the biology and technology, the science with the fiction, the unreal with reality. So all I can say is that these are shaped like hexagons, and hexagons are the shapes of the future. And I think it's pretty likely another civilization was responsible for putting this protective layer around the tropical zone to protect it from the entity, further building this humanity versus the entity plot taking place across multiple versions of humanity. Like at some point they were able to deploy this, EMF field, and maybe the species died with the tiny hope that there's another chance. There's another chance that humanity makes it back to this point and will be protected because of the EMF. I think that would be such a great moment to see, and hoping that the next version and the next version and the next version will one day be victorious because of the past version's interaction. Although if that's the case, it does seem like they just took a pretty big hit, now knowing that the EMF is done for. Hopefully Fishman Campion will be able to save the day from the acid ocean. The snake falls to the world. Campion asks about the veil and watches as Mother kills the snake in the most brutal way possible, even letting us know how intelligent it must have been based on her now holding its brain in her hand. Brutal. She convinces herself to keep the veil on, and Father offers to be there for her emotionally, and she says no, like we talked about before. At this point, I have to wonder if this was the veil's influence, because she is very forward with her, pushing for him and grandmother to hang out, to interact, to take care of the children together. We know that it has more than just an emotional suppressing ability, as it, becomes a sack later on. So I have to wonder what else it can do. The rest of the family meets the wee baby. Campion returns, and they all meet grandmother without the veil. The baby cries when she is introduced, and that's literally the first time I went, oh, wait a minute, something might be up with grandma here. It feels so symbolic that this shepherd of humanity would make the only newborn cry when they enter the room. They watch the holodeck tape of the seed, letting them know what happened to Sue, and boy, oh boy, was that brutal. I do not wish this upon anybody, but it does remind me of the scene from season 1. And I have to wonder if what we're seeing are, past versions of humanity in both of these, like different cycles, since the believers are wearing all white. Next, we have Paul and Marcus talking about the signal coming from underground and needing a way into the pits. Now that the snake is no longer blocking the path, I have to imagine it's possible to get further down in the cage than we saw before. However, the signal coming from underneath would be amazing. It feels like it's the planet itself doing this in some ways, and perhaps the reason that the signal isn't always reliable or obtainable is because it's coming from the core. It's using those holes, and it depends on something to bounce the signal back to the people. Throughout the season, the moons, the 3 moons on this planet, have been highlighted a couple dozen times in the background. And I really have to wonder if that's it. Like the signal and the voice is constantly trying to control things and sending this signal out for, people to receive. But the signal is only reaching people when the moons are in some kind of alignment to project the signal back to the planet or project it across the universe, or wherever the ship was when Otho first received it. I think that would make a whole lot of sense, with the tree being a way to amplify the signal inside of the protected dome. Like the shield is blocking the signal from bouncing off of the moon. It comes from holes, at other parts of the planet. It then tries to hit the moon, tries to come back to the settlement, and then that is blocked by the EMF, meaning that they would need a receiver inside. So the roots go down, and it goes, down assumingly pretty deep, maybe even routing to one of the holes so that it can get to that signal and act like the transmission tower for those in range. We see the snake growing roots and Father learning what fireworks are, which feels weird, right? Like, how did he not know? But I don't know. All right, the celebration anyway, it is for Mother taking down the snake, and we see Vita almost turned into a tree person. Father curves grandmother, telling her that he is devoted to Mother, similar to him telling me that on Reddit, #ForeverAlone. We see the cold invading the once tropical zone, and Mother taking the role as protector of all instead of simply the protector of her children. Back at home, grandmother revamps the gaming system, turning it into some kind of neural net looking thing that everyone can play with their mind. I love the concept, but yeah, honestly, no clue about the grander purpose. It might just be a video game, although it also might be to help with the de-evolution as well. Marcus tries to go down the hole, but still no clue what the plan is here. Honestly, I don't know what they're looking for. Like, we know that it opens to a giant ball of fire in the middle of the earth, but he doesn't know that, and I'm not sure what he's going to find down there other than that. But he is shot before he gets anywhere. Lucius on his own holy crusade, trying to mistakenly save the day for the bad guys. Paul and Campion have their talk where we learn about the last words written by Vril and how badly Paul misses Sue now that she's gone. Something about the way this was delivered makes me believe that we will see both Sue and Vril again in some capacity. Like, the radio showed us that Sue's consciousness survived this procedure. It could have been local to the tree that was just acting like this transmission tower, but I don't know. Paul demanding that we will never see Vril or Sue again makes me think, okay, why do the showrunners want us to overlook this idea? And why are both Vril, the loss of Vril and the loss of Sue, kind of being brought up in the same kind of way? Of course, talking about tragedy, that's pretty common, but I don't know. It just feels like we're not done with either of these characters yet. Marcus is gently tied to the snake tree upside down, and Lucius reveals that he has been hearing the voice of soul. Now that we know it only affects damaged minds, I think it's safe to assume that the trauma that Lucius has gone through has left him vulnerable to this manipulation. Thank you, Morty. I have to wonder if perhaps the specific trauma that caused this also stems from Marcus and his betrayal or acting like the false prophet of his religion. And, while he sat in atheist prison and his believer friends were murdered, all of that feels like a very traumatic experience that could damage the mind and make him susceptible to manipulation. Grandmother announces the plan to stay near the acid ocean and that they should not be eating the animals, citing that it causes problems. Now, here is where it gets good. Grandmother says that humans being ignorant will keep them alive. Something that Father just learned firsthand is not true, as he wanted to keep Vita from not watching the holodeck of the soul seed, and then she was immediately endangered and almost became a tree herself. Like, this was such a good juxtaposition to show Father, hey, that's not the way to do it. That's clearly bad. Father believes in humans and their desire to learn and create and evolve. And he does not believe that they should be kept in the dark, even though he has been hiding things from the children. Grandmother outright announces her plan to keep humanity in the dark for its own good, masked as, gentle banter between robots. And Father politely disagrees instead of realizing how big of a red flag that was. Father then tells a great evolution joke, and we have the sequence in which Mother reveals or realizes what grandmother was doing, only to be trapped in the veil. We next see grandmother cut her mouth covering, and they discuss the plan to allow humanity to devolve in order to protect it from the voice. Now, let me just say, this entire sequence, freaky. My God, this actor killed this scene. She was absolutely creepy, haunting, ominous, all the adjectives, 10 out of 10. Reveal of this twist of the season's, bad guy. I loved it. She says the entity will return to its slumber after the humans transition. And honestly, that feels like more information than she should know, but I don't know. Maybe she knows everything. Maybe they've literally met in a past cycle, and that has yet to be revealed. The idea of it slumbering means that it must also wake. So we could consider the conditions in order for it to wake up from its slumber. If humanity being out of the equation means that it is dormant, perhaps it wakes up when humanity evolves on Earth and it is able to create the technology. Like, at some point, a signal is launched from Earth, maybe consciously, maybe not, and the entity uses that to wake up each time and start luring them back to the planet and starting the, great war of each cycle that will then kill them and push them back to Sol. I also have to believe that because it can sleep and wake up, maybe it can also eat. We've talked about this, a few times. Maybe the purpose of the cycle is to feed it or feed another civilization. Humanity are basically cattle on a rotational grazing path between planets. And maybe they're not, eating humans, but maybe the byproduct of human, the waste, like how we left Earth. Some kind of gas or us destroying the atmosphere or something, left on Earth that could then, be beneficial to whatever this creature is, or something left on Kepler 22b that is then beneficial to this creature. But I'm not exactly sure. I do hope that is revealed in the next season. I just want to know what this voice is. I want to see the big bad finally. Then we have a massive hint at the relics that will be observed by the next cycle of humanity. Lamia being made into a modern relic, and the importance shows that this is something people can idolize and lift up. Perhaps Sol was simply the previous cycle's mother, saving the day from the big bad, and it became, this bastardization of what it really was by Sol and turned into the religion that it was on Earth. The heroes become the villains, and that too cycles endlessly until someone is able to put an end to the entity. Grandmother gives some games to the merchant, and the implication is not good. I have to imagine whatever the games are will help with this, devolution. It feels like the showrunners are taking a weird meta stance that video games are bad and make people stupid, and it feels like that's her plan. I don't know. It feels weird. Honestly, ignorance and bliss and not being able to know that they're in danger because their minds aren't developed enough because they are rotting away in a game system kind of thing. I don't know. Let's move on. Then we see Lucius carving another potential relic for the next cycle, and the episode ends with Marcus floating in thin air. Oh boy, what a mysterious ending. As for why, your guess is as good as mine. I literally have no clue what this is about, but I certainly cannot wait to see how the writers come up with a reason next season. With that in mind, we come to the end of the video and season 2 of Raised by Wolves. It has been a wild ride, and I hope you've enjoyed my videos during the season. Special thank you to Michael Linck and everyone over on Patreon for making this possible. It's truly a blast to talk and be heard, and I hope that you'll comment your craziest theories so that I can hear you as well. I will be covering Westworld this year, as well as some others I've been watching recently. Severance has been suggested a few dozen times, and honestly, I'm down for any recommendations that you might have. Much love, everybody, and I cannot wait to talk to you all again soon.